the like open secret in El Salvador is we went to a law office as well. That guy was pretty cool. He was like just saying, yeah, just hold it to speculate, but no one uses it in El Salvador. It's too much work and it just like creates problems. And that was the Bitcoin meetup was the ultimate checkmate, I think, for the maxis there, because we'd have a discussion or argument about the incentives of Bitcoin. And then when it came time to pay, none of them, not one person at the meetup when we checked out used it. Maybe someone who left early used it. I don't know, but I would guess not, because the like dozen people at the end when the place closed, when we were checking out, not one of everyone just started. They handed out the checks, and everyone was pulling out credit cards, and I'm just like,
Oh,
wow, like clearly there's an incentive issue.
words, not
So
works.
that, yeah, and I tweeted about that because I just found it so interesting that at the Bitcoin meetup in Bitcoin country, they don't pay in Bitcoin. Like, what hope is there for the normal person? He was telling me his experience. He had pulled a bunch of coins off an exchange before Celsius was to collapse, and he transferred it to Chivo. And Chivo, they called him. They were like, excuse me, why is there so much money? Can you send your proof of source of funds and KYC? And he's just like, I thought this was Bitcoin. Like, why do we got to do all that kind of stuff?
What's up, everyone, and welcome to the Tobias Ruck Podcast. Today, I'm talking to a very interesting fellow, Alex Ugorji. He's looking to build like a free private city kind of thing, and he has been in El Salvador recently. So he's currently in Honduras, but went to El Salvador, and to kind of figure out what it is, what like all this BTC, Bitcoin Beach, Lightning kind of stuff is about. And what he like discovered is, a little interesting. He and me and others, we will be speaking at the Electronic Cash Conference in Prague from the 26th to the 28th of August. Link is in the description. We got a promo code, RUCK, Ruck. If you use that, you get 21% off, just like 21 million BTC, I guess. And yeah, let's just jump right into it. I got here with me Alexander Ugorji, and I had the pleasure of sharing like 5 months of my life in the same flat house as him. We were in Saipan together and did some token onboarding, did some whatever. Where are you now at?
I'm in Honduras.
What are you doing in
fertile
Honduras,
Central
man?
American country. While we're trying to continue on with building the breakaway civilization. So it seems, I think most people would agree that Western civilization is on the decline, and there needs to be someone to hold the flame alive. So there are many expats, myself included, looking for the place best to do that. And so far, it seems Honduras has some of the most fertile ground.
Is that from the new City Law? So the way we communicated it is that the City Law basically allows you to build a free private city. One thing that like many libertarians are like eyeballing at. What's up with the cities and what's the current status there? Some news.
Yeah, so a few years back, Honduras passed the ZEDI law. That's the acronym for it. Some kind of zone of employment, development, etc. And it's a special economic zone. There's 7,000 plus special economic zones in the world. There are people who just track them all and geek out on it. But what's interesting about the ZEDI special economic zone is that one, it's privately owned and operated, and two, it's residential. There's almost no privately owned and operated residential special economic zones in the world. So this was basically the first of its kind. It offered a ton of autonomy. The owner would have police force, complete civil law, tax law autonomy, labor law, environmental law, zoning, and almost everything but criminal law would be controlled by the ZEDI.
Duggo, bring him on. No, so it seems like this almost covers everything a government does. Like what is not covered by the study law? Like what can't you do?
It's mainly criminal matters. So say things like cannabis law that would be covered under the criminal code. So you wouldn't be able to change some stuff like that, or violent crime or other things of that sort. The government sets the laws, the Honduran government, but the ZEDI also has the police autonomy. So there's a little bit of uncertainty about how that would work in the case. Can the Honduran police come in? When can they come in? How can they come in? Those norms have not yet been established in the zones. However, in November 2021, the left-wing party came into power, partially campaigning against the ZEDI law. It was sort of, oh boy, this dog is ruining the
Interfering.
flow, but hopefully it's not too loud and someone outside can take care of him. Anywho, the left-wing government came into power on the anti-ZEDI campaign, and they're working to repeal it. So right now they've removed part of the law, and they are like halfway through repealing the constitutional amendment that allowed for ZEDIs to exist. They still have international treaties, and theoretically they're grandfathered in for 10 to 50 years. But right now there's a lot of uncertainty around them that will continue probably for the next 6 months or so. There's ZEDIs negotiating with the government to use the previous special economic zone law, which can be privately owned but non-residential, and add a residential component. So that would be not the best outcome for everyone, but a very good outcome nonetheless, where they could do some pretty serious innovation in the special economic zone, private city type space. So we'll see what happens there. I'm currently in the mountains of Honduras, in a location codenamed Sweetwater, where we call it the big one location. When the big one comes, whatever that is, whether it's Russia and China and US popping off, or just some kind of plague or zombie apocalypse, whatever, this is the place to be. It has self-sufficient power, supply chain of the food, fiber internet, and the ability to manufacture a lot of basic components. So on-site mechanic shop for cars, some fabrication capabilities. So decent. If you had to restart civilization, this would be one of the top places to be, I would say, because we're very far from any geopolitical target, and we have pretty much the basic amenities of modern civilization there, and we could build the rest from here, we think.
That sounds pretty good. Like I think a lot of people would be interested in that. So
And
do you
I
think
also don't want to forget we have nice feminine conservative women as well, which are an essential building block of civilization, I would say.
so do you think it is able to compete with, I mean, much larger projects like the Free State projects, Free State project in America? Do you think the Free State
Oh yeah,
project has
Free State
advantages?
Project. Don't get me started. I mean, it's what's the goal, right? That's the question you always have to ask when assessing something. And if the goal of the Free State Project is to create the freest place in America, then I think it would the second best jurisdiction. The freest place in America is already the Northern Mariana Islands, in particular Saipan. That's like
Shout
the
out to
freedom.
Cyprian.
Yeah, people who go there can tell you that unrivaled freedom and autonomy as a U.S. territory. You don't have to pay into federal taxes. You said pay locally. They have a special Saipan only visa. It's the only place in the country that Chinese citizens can go in the US without a visa. They were exempt from minimum wage until 2009, and only finally reached parity with federal minimum wage maybe 6 years ago or so. So there's tons of examples of the advantages of Saipan. You can just search on YouTube for podcasts from Vin Armani or myself, we've discussed the benefits substantially.
What
But
made you switch from Saipan to Honduras, other than me?
yeah, I didn't know if I would say I switched. I'm still a Saipan resident. I got the Saipan driver's license that no one in the mainland seems to have seen before. So it's quite fun going through security where they're just like, what is this? What do we do with it? I don't know. And still have business activity and residency there and all of that. But the conclusion I and many others are making is simply that the US is not the place for freedom anymore due to the federal government. So going back to New Hampshire, no matter how free New Hampshire can get, say they repeal every state law, 0 state laws exist in New Hampshire, you're still going to have a 36-7% federal income tax. You're still going to have FinCEN, SEC, dozens and dozens of federal bureaucracies and regulations interfering with everything from how you grow your food to uh, if you can exchange money and all kinds of other things. So that's a big issue for freedom, I think, is DC. The states are doing a great job taking back some of their autonomy, but DC just produces too many laws, has too much money, and a willingness to enforce it. Ian Freeman, one of the crypto sixes, facing 420 years in prison for victimless selling of Bitcoin. And I can't think of any country where someone can face 420 years in prison for selling Bitcoin.
Yeah,
Even the
that's
traditional
absurd.
boogeymen of the West, whether it's Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, like 420 years is a extreme sentence. You're gonna have to do something
Wait,
that,
420? Like
yeah,
three
that's
digit?
the, yeah,
Well, at least they went for the 420. Wow, that is
that's
crazy.
even worse. They're taunting him. They're like, oh, you like to smoke cannabis, so we're gonna stack 420 years against you.
Oh my
It could have been
God. So
400, but we had
so
to
that's
find the
just
extra
evil.
20.
Like this
Yeah,
kind of shows to me that the American government, like they're not a lot of it is not like just normal corruption. At some point it's just malice, where it's like, okay, like we really want to show off that we're in charge, and we really want to show you that, especially you guys who are so concerned about freedom. Like if the same thing would happen in China, it's much less like pleasing, I guess, than in America, where like people are like, no, like get off my lawn kind of attitude. And if like something like that can happen, where just out of spite, you can just give someone a 420 420 like
well,
jail
it's
time.
not.
That's crazy.
The spite is the exact number of the sentence, but having a multi-century potential sentence is to put the fear of God and all the people doing crypto without permission. We in Saipan did it, we asked for permission, but that was the issue. We spent half our time trying to stay compliant and figure out how to operate a business with all these regulations that we turned down tons of revenue. We were just like, well, we have MSB license, but we don't even want to use it because there's all these compliance issues, record keeping, all of this. It better be like a massive transaction for it to be worthwhile. And we even canceled some of the software we developed for solutions. We didn't roll out because we're like, well, these are potentially money service business transactions, and we don't want to violate any of the laws because I'd rather not go for 420 years too. So that's
It
kind of,
creates a big chilling effect. It just creates an incredibly strong, and the same with Ross Ulbricht, right? Like he didn't really do like any other nation than the US would not punish it this severely, and
yeah, if
same
he was
for
in
Ian
Europe, he would
Friedman.
have got like 5 years maybe. He was in like Netherlands or Germany or Scandinavia. So
Yeah,
it's the US's regulatory power is so far. You have Telegram and other international parties doing ICOs or raises. Terra, also not based in US. Julian Assange, doesn't matter. Pick your industry. If you're doing something substantial, the US is going to try to claw their way into you. And so it's like, why would I want to be where they have the most jurisdiction. They already claim jurisdiction over me anywhere in the world. Let me at least go to some place where they claim slightly less. That was the idea of Saipan, and also the idea of Honduras, where ideally in a ZETI you could have the least governments claiming jurisdiction over you possible, because you'd have a private government that regulates most aspects of day-to-day. Civil law is more important than criminal law for us non-criminals. So that was the thought process. Unfortunately, there were some speed bumps. Negotiations are ongoing. We'll see what happens in the end. But while in Honduras, checking out the ZETIs, I discovered it's actually an extremely fertile place overall. And it's some place where one or a few people can build something substantial. And that is no longer the case in America, I feel.
So what are
You have to
some
spend,
projects that you like excited about that could be happening in Honduras, like in the near future, like maybe some crypto related stuff, or do you also have something beyond that?
I think there'll be some crypto related projects coming out soon. We're looking at a stablecoin project based in Honduras where there's, as far as we understand, doesn't seem to be any crypto regulations. We're going through the legal due diligence process as we explore this opportunity, but basically seems that stable coins are a non-issue in Honduras, where in the US, it's likely there'll be tons of regulation. Even before the implosion of UST, there was a lot of talk about requiring bank charters and this and that. And it's like, that's what I'm saying. When can one person do it? Well, one person cannot get a bank charter in the US. You need millions if you're lucky. Like if you can open a bank with $5 million, you found some nice loophole, like special zone, and more likely tens, hundreds, maybe even a billion to open a bank in the US, where opening one in Honduras would, I mean, I haven't looked at this in particular, but generally it's a lot cheaper to do things. Whether you want to start a hydro plant or open a bank or build a private city or resort or anything like that, it's just, there's a bunch of bureaucracy. Latin America loves its paperwork, but the bureaucracy can be overcome at a much lower cost than the US, where even though the FinCEN, that's the Treasury Department's financial crimes unit, basically, that regulates money service business activity, even though their paperwork for MSB is relatively short, you mess up, you could be facing 5 to 10 years for each count you mess up. And so that's like, although the paperwork is easy, you have to spend a lot of time and energy and money making sure this niche case, is this fall into it? I don't know. They didn't really, the law doesn't take into account these new technologies. What do we do? Same thing with SEC, or which tokens are securities, which are not, we don't really know. So,
Exactly.
and all, same
Library is
thing.
still not sure, like and the SEC actually said, oh, we never said that Bitcoin is not a security, but then they kind of said that, and it's like just going back and forth and very inconsistent. And it seems like that is in Honduras. It's still complicated, but at least you don't like they're not as strict about it or something.
Right. And the other thing that's very appealing is, while I'm trying to do a breakaway civilization, I look at it similar to the Europeans who fled Europe in the 17th and 18th century looking for more freedom. They were getting persecuted and harassed, and just they couldn't live their lives in peace. And they said, let me go to this new land where there's more opportunity to do my thing with my people. Most of them came over, whether it's the Puritans or the Quakers or others, Amish, they came with their people to live in a community with their people. And I see an opportunity for this in Honduras, especially on the crypto front, building a circular economy. Because to build a circular economy, you need to have sufficient economic weight to onboard nearby merchants. And that was the idea of Saipan, is if you're trying to build a crypto cluster, well, go to some place that has a much smaller economy. We're bringing 10 to 20 people to a restaurant, they actually notice it. Where if you're in your average US city, you're like, oh, we're going to bring 10 to 20 people once a month for a meetup. They're going to be like, what's that going to be? $200? Like, that doesn't even pay like one waiter's bill for 2 days. And where here it's like $200, that's like 2 weeks of labor costs paid. And thus they're like, oh, tell me more. Like, I'm interested. And thus we think we can have a much higher penetration rate here for the circular economy projects we're going. We've had great access to businesses so far, talking with the power plant in Utila and also the location where I'm at now to start taking crypto for power, which is a massive cost for most people. And if every business can pay their power in crypto, well, that's the perfect offer. Each business should be willing to take as much as their power bill each month in crypto. So that's already a great potential start. And that was done in a very short amount of time, very accessible. So those kind of things are what's magical about Honduras, just being able to access a much higher level of people in society and having increased purchasing power is really useful when trying to build a breakaway civilization, a circular economy, and just a community in any regard.
I think that's one of the biggest selling points of these like places like Honduras, where like you just, as a American, as a European, you just immediately have much better access to higher ranks, like to like higher, bigger companies and so forth. Than like in America, like you'll be like, oh, what's this champ? Like, why is he talking to me? Like, why is he wasting my time and so forth? But in Honduras, it seems way easier to access these higher ranks.
I would say
Yes, go ahead.
Michael Bloomberg, I believe, spent 700 million on his presidential campaign, and he didn't even win one state.
Wow.
And so you see this time and again, billionaires spending ridiculous sums of money to try to move the needle in America, and they can't.
What would you
So
say
it's like
to
if
that? What would you say to the argument that America is still the big prize? If you like it's where all the money is, it's where all the power is, where all the leverage is. And if you go to Honduras, you're like kind of like losing all of that potential, like all of the potential customers, all the potential money
how
you
do
could
we
get.
lose them? We can export to America. We're in the world where everyone's nearshore. America wants to be closer to its supply chain. We're quite close to America in Central America. And for services, we're in the American time zone and like a 2.5 hour flight to major cities like Houston and Miami. So we are close to America in American time zone and already have a strong export relation with America. So I think it's
So
the
this could be
perfect.
interesting for Americans who are like looking for something like that is like more, because a lot of stuff going on in America is quite insane. And if you're like, oh, I'm kind of fed up with that, let me at least use this a little bit like a resort to like distance myself from that insanity a little. Do you think that's a appealing case?
You don't have any of the drama here that you would in America. It's like, oh, Supreme Court abortion case, everyone's freaking out. You're just like, well, yeah, abortion was never legal here, so nothing to freak out about. And generally, in most issues locally, they don't affect you at all as a foreigner, and you just can't care about American issues as much when you're so far removed. And you're like, well, it doesn't really matter what law they pass or tax or whatever. If you're an expat, you get a bunch of tax exemptions and deductions, and if you structure yourself well, you'll pay very little tax here, and your money goes a lot farther as well. So you don't need to stress. If you're one who wants to focus on living life and not working to live, or you work to live but not live to work rather, then this is a great way to do that. You can get a remote job or freelance, and for depending on where you live, 1,000 to 2,000 a month, you can have quite a good lifestyle here, raise a family, do all those things that are unaffordable in America, even if you're making 50K a year, the median income, roughly, maybe it's 60K, who knows. Still, it's tough to afford a family life and all of that in America, where if you're making 5K a month in Honduras, then you could have 3 families.
Interesting. So, I'm mostly focused on the crypto side of things because, I work for ABC, I work for eCash, I also work on Lotus. And quite early on in the Saipan stuff, we decided to go with eCash. Now, this was, I think, mostly driven. Well, it was mostly driven by the two of us. I think, it was later than that Cyprian was like, "Oh no, actually, you guys are correct. Let me also switch over to eCash."
Yeah,
What
if
do
I
you
remember
think?
correctly. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, so just to formulate my question, what do you think were the reasons we went for eCash instead of like Bitcoin Cash? Because that was the debate: should we go for Bitcoin Cash or eCash? And I mean, now it's clear that bet was a good bet, right? Like we can see that in many ways. But what were the reasons? And also, if you were to do another project, would you like, what are the properties you're looking for now? Do you think that changed somehow? Or yeah, I think that's a question.
Yeah, so I'd say one of the big things that made us go with eCash is that I'm agnostic, right?
Mhm.
These are religions, and as an agnostic theist, it's like I'm not fully bought into anything. I have my beliefs, but I know that I can't know for sure. So BCH was a very strong religion in our social circle. It was the dominant chain because it was the best embodiment of peer-to-peer electronic cash. But this new kid on the block, eCash, had come out, and we'd kind of been following the fork in real time, seeing what's going on and like behind the scenes, all that kind of stuff. We've been, following the gossip. And it had seemed to me at this point around May, June 2020 that eCash was alive and going to stay around. So with that into consideration, just assessing the merits, it was a cheaper chain, easier to get access to the development team. There was potential funding available, and it just seemed that they had a better incentive structure. I think blockchains are largely about incentives, and the incentive of eCash was to build as much infrastructure for businesses on it as possible so that the businesses could help to grow the chain and the value of the coin. And they had also been good about addressing all the concerns we had. We could just ask them, and they would say, "Oh, here's why you don't need to worry about that." So between having a clear development team that had the incentive due to the Coinbase output to keep improving things, and they had done a good job so far with the blockchain technical side, at least, it was like, well, why not? Was basically the question I asked you. And then we kind of discussed it for not that long, a few days, maybe max a week. And we're just kind of like, seems like the move.
It
And
was a
then
risky play. Like it felt very like, okay, let's try it, but it could go either way.
uh, maybe it felt more risky for you than for me. It's like just it being cheaper seemed from a business perspective, why would I want to pay 5 to 10 times as much per transaction? That seems like not
Well,
ideal. We
we're
wanted
using stable coins. Like maybe that needs to be said. Like we didn't use eCash directly because you could be like, well, the price is so low, like it's so volatile and everything. But since the price was so low, we paid basically nothing for transactions, and we could just do them for free, more or less.
Yeah, and we also had a got some eCash early on that we just won from some contest. Basically, Kane's like giving away 1 million eCash, and when calculating that, it really reinforced the decision in my mind, where it's like, wait, this can last us for how long? 1 million, how many transactions? Like, okay. And so it's like if you just prepay your transactions, you don't have to worry about the price going up. 1 million coins, how many transactions is that, would you estimate?
I think like 10,000, not
20
10,000.
20,000, something like that.
Yeah, something that order of magnitude. 1,000 to 10,000, something that realm, I think. Yeah. So a lot.
So yeah, it's like, wow, just this can take care of us for at least a year, potentially like 5 years. I mean, depending on how many transactions we end up doing. But there was a lot where I was just like, yeah, why would I want to use a more expensive chain? And that applies to both BCH, but also to the other competitors, whether it's Bitcoin or Ethereum. It just seemed that eCash had much better fundamentals and incentives. So like
what would
I
you
was
say
the
about
one
the
to build
network
on.
effect? Because clearly Bitcoin Cash, like it's accepted at coinpayments.net, eCash is not. It's accepted, like it's even a part of PayPal. What would you say
Well,
to like, what would we say to that?
that's I would say that's good for us because we were trying to build that infrastructure. It was the opportunity to build new infrastructure, just like in Honduras, where they don't really have an Amazon yet. So it's like, oh, well, I can build the Amazon. So it's that kind of mentality. If they're lacking infrastructure that we already know how it's supposed to look, then that's great. Someone solved the UX and general problem already. You just got to copy it on to eCash, and RiPay did a lot of that, like block explorers, wallet apps, etc. Just BIP70 servers copying things that already existed on other chains over to eCash, and it's a good opportunity to become a essential player. Right? You always want to be an essential business, to use the COVID terminology, and since we think the next step will be stable coins, or at least a stable coin, we weren't really concerned about the native token. And in fact, we think the best UX, that you don't even know you're using a blockchain. You don't even know you're using a native token. So Vin's postage protocol, I think, is very useful on that front, where the user doesn't need to mess around with gas fees and this and that, just all these UX nightmares for the very average users who don't use crypto and don't want to use crypto. So many of the things that people would be concerned about, it's like the price is too low. It's like, well, yeah, we're building a business. We want the low price. That means our transaction costs are lower. We look at the eCash price, that's the price of oil for us. So lower the better. As low as it can be, that the devs can be sustained, that's the price that we prefer. And so all those considerations were not a big issue for us. And we want to use stable coins because the incentives to spend it are high. This big elephant in the room for traditional cryptos is, so you think your coin is, the one true coin, and it's gonna be the standard one day and moon so much. Why would you want to spend it? There's no reason to spend that. Spend your filthy fiat. And that's Gresham's law. You want to spend your bad money before you spend your good money. So there's no incentive to use it. And thus we wanted to build a stable coin on bad money so that people can start to get into the crypto ecosystem. There can be an alternative to the central bank digital currency, and they can pivot over to something else later when it makes sense. But initially, people can be spending their bad money, and thus they actually will spend. So with that kind of thought process, it didn't really matter what the cash price was.
Um, yeah, and there's also other considerations on top of that. So Gresham's law, I think, is one of the big topics. Also, just like people who accept crypto, they have a business to run. Like if they accept crypto, which is volatile. I mean, they might even be subject to what's it, the capital gains tax. You have to I get tickets paid in Bitcoin now, and like I have to liquidate it. I have to watch out for the price. There's like so many things you have to account for when doing a business with volatile crypto that you really don't have on stable coins, and it's much simpler to cash out. And yeah, and if you are on if you have a circular economy, like a city kind of token which you can mainly use there. I mean these are things that are very common. Like when you go to Korea, and I was in Seoul, like there was just like these I'm not sure what it was called, but it was just a card where you could load it, you could use the trains with that, you could use whatever. And it could also be used at other places. They have something similar in Japan with I forgot the name.
Same as Hong Kong,
Yeah.
octopus cards, and just pick some animal or whatever, make a card. You can spend it at the train and a bunch of stores and other stuff.
Yeah, and this is a very successful model, and I think it's something that people will over time imitate, because with crypto the infrastructure is all there and it's very secure. And I think this is also something that we didn't even mention with eCash. So you gave quite a few points there, but other things that I think we also took into consideration was Avalanche, where you could like when people would ask us, I don't know, I'm not sure if that would happen a lot, but if people would ask that, okay, so the money is there, like it's in my wallet, and then we could be like, well, yes, it's there, but there could be like a reorg, and it's in the mempool, and then people would be like we would just immediately lose them. But if we can say, oh no, like this is completely finalized, this is now like it moved from my wallet to your wallet, and it's like it's done, it's settled, like there's nothing that can possibly happen. The user experience benefit of that, it's it's much closer to cash. And at least for me, this was definitely a consideration when we went for eCash over Bitcoin Cash.
Yeah, those considerations I think are missing, and the incentives as well in the Bitcoin ecosystem. And maybe that's a good segue into
let's talk about El Salvador, the promised land. The money of the Bitcoin volcano city. What's going on there? Like you've been there. Tell us some of the cool stuff, and tell us some of the insane stuff.
Yeah, so being in Honduras, El Salvador is just a neighboring country. So it's quite easy to visit, and especially where I am now, less than an hour from the border of El Salvador. And so I visited twice. The first time I went to Bitcoin Beach, I believe that was in April. Yes, in April. And then now it's July, and I went earlier this month to San Salvador. So Bitcoin Beach, it was not what I expected. I think that's pretty common when you go places that are hyped. It's like, what is this going to be? And it's not what you expected. The beach and stuff wasn't as like I expected to be Saipan-esque beaches, and I was been spoiled. So I don't know if it's fair to criticize them for having been to some pretty cool places, but the beach was a little underwhelming. It had good waves, but I don't really surf. But the beach, I don't think matters too much. The crypto experience is what everyone cares about, myself included. I don't really go to the beach very often, even when I live right next to it. So paid for a bunch of things in crypto, but I also had difficulty paying for things in crypto. So we arrived in San Salvador by bus. We need to get SIM cards. This is a legal tender, so theoretically you're supposed to pay for everything. We went to one of the big phone carriers. They wouldn't take crypto. Our taxi over there wouldn't take crypto. But once we're in Bitcoin Beach, then our hotel would take crypto. The restaurant would take crypto. The surf shop would take crypto. So the penetration on actual Bitcoin Beach was quite high, seemed to be near 100. The payment experience, though, was somewhat lackluster at the hotel. The boss basically has the wallet. They didn't have a point of sale terminal that could allow us to pay. The employee could hold it and verify it was paid, and then the boss would receive the money. Instead, they messaged the boss on WhatsApp. He would send over the QR code and you would scan that. So it was a little removed. And I think it's because the infrastructure on Lightning in terms of payment terminals and all of that isn't as robust yet as they would like. So many businesses just have some makeshift solutions. The fee, if I remember correctly, was 20 something cents to send a transaction, which wasn't super high, but it wasn't very low either. I'm not sure if it was a percentage of the transaction. It was 200 something dollar transaction. So as a percentage, relatively small. And when I would just buy some kind of like a can of club soda at the store, then it was zero. There were some UX adjustments for me, not having used Lightning before, where I was required to enter a memo for the transaction, and it wouldn't sound like, why isn't it sending? And like they give the guy my phone, he just types in some random letters, and then it can send. So you gotta have a memo in there for, depends on your wallet and the invoices and all of that, I think, but it seems that many, if not all, require some kind of memo. And yeah, the price went down about 10% since I got there, which great from a legal perspective, no capital gains issues to worry about. But I had capital losses where I lost all the money I just converted into not all of it, I lost 10% of it that I converted into Bitcoin. So that didn't feel very good, that got poor instantly, and having to think about the price fluctuations. Like, do I have enough money in my wallet? Well, I don't know. I loaded it thinking that it would not fall 10% overnight. So maybe I have to load on more into it. And I couldn't get the Bitcoin Beach wallet because it doesn't support Americans, likely related to MSB type issues. So I heard that was the wallet to get. It listed the merchants and had some they're working on some stability features where you could use synthetic USD or something to stabilize Bitcoin. That sounded really cool. I wanted to try it out, but that wasn't possible because I can't download the wallet, and it's quite hard to find on their GitHub or their website as well. So I was kind of just like, whatever, I'll just use Moon Wallet, spelled with two U's. And overall, the wallet's not bad, but you can't verify on the blockchain, which I wasn't used to. I've made payments and I want to show someone I made the payment, but you can't. And even getting the payment history, like I said, I scanned the QR code that the boss had. So the merchant had to like look at my phone to confirm that it was paid.
Oh
And
wow, yeah.
that's
Well, this can be solved by
not,
better point of sale system, but yeah, that makes sense. Wow.
well, I'm not yes, it can, but not as easily, because you have the like lightning channel from one party to the other. So a traditional point of sale on other blockchains could look on the blockchain to confirm the transaction, or at least see it's broadcasted, where here the difficulty of that is much higher. So that
Were
was
you
my Bitcoin Beach.
were you positively surprised by anything? Were like, oh, this is actually pretty dope.
The adoption was higher than I expected in Bitcoin Beach. It was like, wow, they actually somehow managed to get all of these businesses to speculate on Bitcoin volatility. I'm very impressed, because if I were running a business, I would not want to take Bitcoin because of volatility. I'd rather take, some kind of Solana stable coin, even though I'm not a big Solana fan, but like, it's business, it's what works. Like, I'm trying to run a business, not, you know, operate a missionary like office. So I got to focus on the objective, which is having a profitable enterprise and serving customers, not forcing my views upon them. So I was surprised they were able to get so many people. I'd be interested to go back now that Bitcoin has fallen not just 10%, but when I went, I think it was around 44, 45,000. So
Wow.
it's cut in more than half. And I suspect many of them were holding a large percentage of their Bitcoin because it's going to go to 1 million or 100,000 or whatever by the end of 2021, or maybe 2022 now. It's a little behind schedule, but don't lose faith. It's the future, blah, blah, blah. So I suspect some businesses who believe that like it can only go up in the like medium term are now thinking, well, it's been like 6 months and I'm still underwater. Like this is kind of a problem. So I was surprised by the adoption rate. And then when I went to just a neighboring town from Bitcoin Beach, I was surprised by the lack of adoption. So in Bitcoin Beach, it seemed pretty much everywhere accepts it. In the neighboring town, which was more developed and nicer, Bitcoin Beach is not very developed and you can feel it. It's kind of like open like roads and some like little sewage and stuff like that you'll encounter. Or the next one was kind of a little like gated beach community type thing that was like well planned. Almost nowhere there took Bitcoin. They were just like, don't listen to the president. We don't take that. Like it's just marketing ploy. That's what one guy said at the surf shop there. Where the Bitcoin Beach surf shops all took it. The other surf shops in the neighboring town were like, we don't really mess around with that. And then I went to an ATM and I was like, could it be a place to off ramp for cheap? And it was 11% fee or something like
Oh
that.
boy.
And I was like, well, this is lame. So after a day there and reflecting on my first couple hours in the capital, I was kind of like, seems like this is just like hype. It's a marketing ploy. There is higher Bitcoin utilization probably than any other country, but it's certainly not the promised land, at least not yet. So then after a couple months, and now we're in July, which is the current month, I visited again in San Salvador. There was someone who's been in the country for the last year or so, working to connect with everyone and network and make the promised land actually materialize. So she was giving us the pitches and talking about having high school weekend classes and writing these little books and trainings and education, all that kind of cool grassroots type activism that they're doing. And she was like, stay an extra day, I'll take you to the Bitcoin meetup. And then I go to the Bitcoin meetup and I was like, the first guy I talked to, he was telling me like, oh yeah, I've been in it for a little bit now. I got in 2008 or 2018, and I've been consulting for the government on it. And like I'm like, wait, you got in 2018, you're consulting for the government. Like this is the expert, and like he had not really understood many things. Like the one challenge I had was the Chivo wallet wasn't supposed to be the main wallet. It was supposed to be more the Strike wallet, but the Strike guys were like, we can't roll it out this fast. It's too fast. And the Chivo guys were like, we'll do it. So there was a bunch of UX issues with that were tough. And then for the consultants like him, they didn't have access to the wallet and they were trying to consult with businesses on what it will be like and how to set it up. And they didn't have the wallet yet. So it's just like the blind leading the blind, so to speak. And that was like interesting that this was like a Bitcoin consultant in El Salvador. Wasn't like, I was definitely more knowledgeable about crypto and even Bitcoin probably than him. And I wouldn't feel comfortable really consulting at a very high level about this kind of stuff. But I guess compared to the businesses, he was an expert. But I also learned some interesting things. Like the Chiva wallet's just for El Salvador. You need some kind of ID, maybe a resident or business. A business can definitely do it. A resident perhaps can do it. And so we don't have much experience. We, the foreigners, don't have much experience. But he was telling me his experience. He had pulled a bunch of coins off an exchange before Celsius was to collapse, and he transferred it to Chivo, and Chivo, they called him. They were like, excuse me, why is there so much money? Can you send your proof of source of funds and KYC? And he's just like, I thought this was Bitcoin. Like, why do we got to do all that kind of stuff? And they're like, oh,
Wow.
we got to be compliant, make sure no funny business is going on. And it's like, I told him I would send the minimum required stuff only. And I was kind of just like, head palm, like, that will show them the minimum only required. Like, why do they even need these government wallets? And then we started talking like, can they see your transactions and all of that? And he's like, oh, I don't know, like maybe they seem to be able to know how much I'm like at least trying to offer him. Maybe they can see how much is on my account, blah, blah, blah. And it just seemed like this is what the free money looks like. Like this doesn't seem like free money. This is just some government like wallet app. They're KYCing you and having all these restrictions. And then I asked them the killer question. So you're gonna pay for your beer in Bitcoin? And he was like, no. Like if I did, then I'd be super mad in like a year when it like is worth way more. And so I was like, huh. It seems that people, despite being a self-identified maxi, seem to get the incentives. And I had similar conversations with other people at the meetup, and they're like, it was really weird because they would say, well, yeah, people really need to spend and support El Salvador because unless Bitcoin's used, the price won't go up. And so we got to use it. But I'm not going to use it because I don't want to, waste my sats, especially at this low price. And I'm just like, well, how, like, don't you see this as a disconnect? And they're like, well, eventually, when everyone's using it, their volatility and other stuff won't be a problem. I'm like, how is everyone going to be using it if you're not willing to use it? Like, you're the Bitcoin tourist in El Salvador and not willing to use it. Like, how do you expect normal people to be willing to use it? And the like open secret in El Salvador is we went to a law office as well. That guy was pretty cool. He was like just saying, yeah, just hold it to speculate, but no one uses it in El Salvador. It's too much work and it just like creates problems. And that was the Bitcoin meetup was the ultimate checkmate, I think, for the maxis there, because we'd have a discussion or argument about the incentives of Bitcoin. And then when it came time to pay, none of them, not one person at the meetup when we checked out used it. Maybe someone who left early used it. I don't know, but I would guess not, because the like dozen people at the end when the place closed when we were checking out. Not one of everyone just started. They handed out the checks and everyone was pulling out credit cards, and I'm just like,
Oh,
wow, like clearly there's an incentive issue.
words, not
So
works.
that yeah, and I tweeted about that because I just found it so interesting that at the Bitcoin meetup in Bitcoin country, they don't pay in Bitcoin. Like, what hope is there for the normal person? And that was really I want to say it was eye-opening, but I'd already had a little taste of it in the neighboring town of Bitcoin Beach that people don't really pay with it. And I talked to enough Bitcoin lovers to know they don't like paying in Bitcoin. What was eye-opening was 100%. I expected like, 75% would pay in fiat, but it being 100%. And these are the same people who are saying, oh, we gotta, invest in El Salvador and support the project. Because from what I gather, if they don't get more investment and usage in the next year or so, it's probably gonna fail because it's very politically costly. They're taking a lot of heat and they're not really getting the benefits that they had hoped for. They're trying to do all these Bitcoin bonds and other stuff. Part of that is the regulation is taking forever to propagate. And so the investors are like, well, you want us to just invest without regulation? Like, that's not going to work. We need to have some idea of what the climate will look like and these incentives and the residency programs and all the things talked about. So it's like a race against time. Can they get the regulations out and raise the money? Because people are starting to lose interest between the price falling and the slowness to get all the regulations going. It's like, why invest there is the question,
So
especially if you're a Bitcoiner.
do you think the project in El Salvador is mostly like a mimetic project and it's not really about solving any problems?
It's certainly increasing tourism. It's good marketing for the country. I don't think I would have went there if not for the Bitcoin legal tender.
Oh,
And
do you meet
perhaps
many
eventually,
Bitcoiners who just go there for Bitcoin?
yeah,
Is it common?
at Bitcoin Beach, you'll like talk to anyone at your hotel and they'll be like, oh yeah, I just, heard about Bitcoin Beach, wanted to see what it's like. So I came over here and the hotel prices are no joke. There can be like 100 plus at night. And
Wow.
it's like, that's quite expensive compared to the neighboring town where it might be like half that price. So there's a premium. It's like a experience. It's something you got to do. All the vloggers and stuff are checking it out, and then their fans check it out. So it's a great tourism marketing strategy and a cool thing to do. They do have some businesses like the Domino's at the El Salvador airport takes Bitcoin. So that was cool to
Nice.
see. But it's definitely not legal tender, and the status there even seems in question in terms of will Bitcoin as on paper legal tender, how long will that last? What will happen with the elections? Like all kinds of stuff like that is in doubt. So I would say it's somewhat of a disappointment overall, and I don't mean to like it's great they did it. We need more leaders to do creative things and innovate, and people should support them. Not trying to bash El Salvador, just trying to provide objective feedback that like you can't use it everywhere. Even corporate businesses that could implement it if they want to. The supermarket, for example, in San Salvador, one of the cashiers accepted Bitcoin. So they had like a Bitcoin only line. We didn't pay in Bitcoin because we were just like, well, why do we want to waste Bitcoin? Like the guy
Yeah.
I'm with, he likes Lightning and all that kind of stuff, has taken the courses and gone to the conferences. And I'm like, you want to pay? He's like, oh, no, I don't really want to waste it. So let's just pay in fiat. We've already paid in Bitcoin in El Salvador. Like we've done the thing. So no need to do it all the time. And that I think is the big issue they face is you get to tourists after you pay for 5, 10 transactions. You're like, okay, I know I could pay if I wanted to. I could survive in Bitcoin, but I don't really want the inconvenience. I don't want to waste the sats. So I'm just going to go back to paying in dollars because it's quite convenient that the El Salvador actual legal tender is dollars. Uh, very easy to see the prices and deal with that. So let me just use those and not mess around with the Bitcoin itself.
That's interesting. Okay, yeah. It's surprising because I mean we always hope, like me who is always more of a like cash on the cash side of things and a little bit skeptical of the Lightning project. I still really hope that it would like be big and that it would like take off and like set like a almost like a beacon of like, okay, hey, this is what you want to imitate. This is something that is a successful project and so forth. And it does seem like there are a lot of merits to the project, but it's seems definitely overhyped, and that's not what we should aspire to. Um, yeah. Now, on the question of Lightning, so the for people who don't really know, the Lightning network is like a layer on top of Bitcoin, and it like you open channels between people, and you can just send money between people like without committing it on the blockchain right away, and then you can like chain channels together to create like a whole network. Um, and of course you don't care too much about the technicals, but if you were to pick something for for a free private city project, would you go for something like Lightning, or would you prefer something that is like that's directly on chain? And do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Um, I think you just need to talk to Bitcoiners about Lightning and it'll answer it pretty quickly. One of the guys there, the most technical guy, I asked him if he was going to pay, and he said, "Oh no, like I'm having some issues with my wallet and I have to switch over to Mun. I hear it has less issues." And I'm like, "Your wallet has issues. You want to switch to a wallet with less issues?" Like these words are not inspiring confidence, and you're a technical guy. This is a guy who likely runs his own node, and that's why he's having technical issues because he's running his own node and trying to deal with all kinds of stuff like that. And this has happened to another guy uh, who is in Honduras and working to build a breakaway civilization, young folk from Germany, and he's likes the Lightning technology. He also likes the eCash and other stuff. He just likes the innovation and technology and all that good stuff. But his Lightning node has had issues as well. So the two people I know with Lightning nodes, they have issues with it, and they're fairly technical people. And it's like, how do you expect a normal person to do it? And it's like, well, we don't. Like, they can just use someone else's node. And it's like, well, what are the implications of that? You start to lose the privacy benefits and non-custodial, maybe even uncentral transactions. One discussion that I had with Falk is, how would tainted coins work in Lightning? And he was like,
Bitcoins,
I
yeah.
never thought about that. There might be some way to like initially block it. You could like create your own channels and eventually you could get it in if you really wanted to, but like I never thought about that. There could be some way to interact with that. Our ultimate conclusion was probably that Lightning is better for tainted coins on the Lightning network, but there could be issues when you're trying to settle the transactions. So that's something I'm interested to see how it develops over the next few years as tainted coins become a bigger issue. But just the talking to the people who know Lightning far better than most, them having issues with their wallets and saying it's like, oh, it's not here yet, it's still new. I'm like, it's still new. Bitcoin is over 10 years old and it can't even do basic payment stuff anymore. Like it's basically had to restart its technological development on the layer 2 because the layer 1 doesn't work well enough at scale. And it's just kind of like, what are we doing here? Why not just use projects that have layer 1s that are more scalable? eCash has been very reliable and the wallets work very well. So, and these are the funding level, the number of devs, the ecosystem, everything is a tiny fraction of Lightning. It's probably 1/100th of Lightning, but it's better already and on chain. So that, like, I would lean towards eCash. And when I asked others about that, they were saying, well, how are you going to address the on-chain transactions at scale? You're going to need these massive nodes. And I was trying to make the case for eCash, which I had not made with a highly technical person. It's one thing to talk with normie or even just like slightly technical person, but when you're talking to someone who, and I invited him on to be his podcast for next week to have a more in-depth discussion. But he is quite knowledgeable about all the esoteric technical aspects of crypto, and I'm having to talk with him. Very good experience to help me to learn more. I asked Tobias some good questions, and that's what sparked this podcast. It was like, oh, we should talk publicly so that everyone can get the knowledge, right? God gave us wealth to help the poor. So let's share our wealth of knowledge with those who don't have as large a wealth of knowledge, and they can benefit from it as well. So one of the questions we discussed was, and this was brought up by this very technical crypto guy. Well, how do you scale when you have, I said eCash is going for 1 million transactions per second, and he was just like, that's going to be so much data. And so I gave him, I think, a decent answer, extremely good, given that I'm not working with the back-end aspects of it, but perhaps I'll re-ask it to Tobias and he can give a eCash developer answer. So his case was 1 million transactions per second. How much data is that going to generate a day? And won't you be forced to use industrial servers and whole warehouses to store this level of data?
So yes, yeah, that's the big question, and I would say there will be two kinds of nodes, and maybe even more. But first of all, there will be the archival nodes. So currently, all my eCash nodes are they store every single transaction. So they get the transaction and they just keep it forever. But this is not what it will look like for businesses who run this stuff. So what will happen is that they will likely delete the history, except for maybe their customers or something, just to keep it in like the wallet. So for if you have a node that stores all the transactions, then yes, that will be terabytes of data every day. I mean, for companies like Google and so forth, terabytes per day is like nothing. Obviously, like they store probably about terabytes per day, and let's think about that at scale. And then you could be like, well, yeah, wouldn't this like prevent many like people, just ordinary people who want to run their own node to run that, because that's going to cost thousands of dollars, maybe even at really, really large levels, maybe even tens of thousands of dollars every month. But to that, I say is that if eCash hits 1 million transactions per second, and those are actually economically important transactions per second, then it is the transactional network of the globe, right? It is it is the money, right? Like people probably don't understand how significant that is. Like it's like at that scale, you completely altered civilization on a hard, like on a level that's beyond imagination what we have right now. So compared to that, is okay, what kind of businesses will actually run or what kind of people actually run a node? So I think it will be on that front, it will be companies who are like, it will be a lot of companies who really, really need to run these servers. Like they have a very, very high like a dollar sign behind those nodes. Therefore, there will be the money for to provide for that. And $10,000 per month for a good company, that's nothing, right? Like how many businesses will there be who will run that? It will probably be a similar number to what Bitcoin, like BTC, currently has. So on that, and that is for archival nodes. For non-archival nodes, for pruned nodes who don't store the system, that will be more for hobbyists. It will still be quite expensive because you probably need a bunch of terabytes in order to store the UTXO set. And I think my AirPods ran out. But there will be the for the UTXO set, and that will be updated all the time, and it doesn't really grow linearly like the transaction history does, and yeah, and therefore, like, it depends on what you want to do, and I don't think like, I think, yeah, there's two aspects to that. First of all, we can really optimize that with pruning. Also with like the Project Hamilton paper from the Federal Reserve, they were able to do 1.7 million transactions per second on 32 AWS instances. So that's still a lot, but like, compared to what when I worked at HP, when I worked at different places, like that compared to that, that's really not a lot. Like it's almost trivial, the cost for running such a node. And if this is just the price you have to pay to process transactions, then like it will almost certainly still be cheaper than a credit card for a large percentage of companies all around the globe. And yeah, I mean, I think that's the answer. We can optimize it, and the costs will be worth it at scale. No, one sec. Sorry, I lost you on the.
This is not a problem yet. I'll just keep talking.
So say that again. Yeah, so just say that again.
I was saying, it seems two things you're saying. One is it's not a problem yet because 1 million transactions per second is a massive amount, and thus will be require massive amount of storage, likely industrial grade, unless we have some crazy advances in computing storage and other related spheres. But if we get to that point, which is very far away, most likely, then it should be relatively easy. So that to me makes a lot of sense. And I don't think it's an issue at the moment or in the next few years, but it's good that Bitcoiners bring up that question. I think it's a worthwhile question to ask.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's like this at this transaction volume. We know like there's a paper on that. Project Hamilton, OpenCDBC, they were able to do 1.7 million transactions per second. And we know the hardware requirements. It's not too bad. But again, 1.7 million transactions per second. Like, keep in mind, this is Visa processes around 3,000 transactions per second on average. On peak, they process around 40,000 transactions per second. So 1 million transactions per second is like way beyond that. That's like a couple of orders of magnitude beyond that. So, and keep in mind, Visa is processing trillions of dollars every year. So this is the amounts of money that are completely unimaginable. If you just take like a millionth of that, or a tenth of a millionth of that, will 100%, and we know that will 100% cover the storage and the process, like the requirements.
And the cost should go down over time too.
Yeah, exactly. And at the end of the day, it becomes more robust this way. Like, Bitcoiners always talk about decentralization and so forth. But if you have, like, would you rather have like a lot of weak nodes that like can be very easily DOS attacked, where you just have to like do some kind of, I don't know, like a lot of requests on one machine? Or would you rather have the same size network, like similar number of nodes, but they're all really beefy? They're all really powerhouses of transaction throughput. I think everybody would pick the second one. And yeah, because like Bitcoiners make it like this dichotomy. It's like, oh, either you have a large number of very weak nodes, or you have a small number of like very strong nodes. But given like the dynamics of a currency system, I think we can also have like a big network of strong nodes. I think that should be, I think this simplifies it down to just that.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, I think it's worthwhile for the two camps, the layer 2 guys and the layer 1 guys, to talk with each other. They ask good questions that are worth thinking about from a different perspective. But it just seems to me they have so much money and time and all that on their sides, first mover advantage, and they're still struggling with what I would consider to be relatively basic problems, where eCash is like a smaller, less well-funded, much newer blockchain, and they're making great strides and have solutions for most of Bitcoin's problems already. So it's like, seems to me, I like Shama's phrase, Bitcoin is what Bitcoin does. And one of them is doing peer-to-peer electronic cash, and one is not, right? The uncensorable transaction that you can send to anyone at a low cost, aka digital cash, is much more accurate description of eCash than it is of Bitcoin. Bitcoiners don't like to spend Bitcoin. eCashers also have a similar incentives issue, and perhaps that's a transition into Lotus. But it's the eCashers, I think, are a lot more humble and open-minded, where they're like, maybe this, at least on the developer builder side. I suspect the hodlers are hodlers, right? They're just like, when moon, when moon, when moon. But the people actually trying to build peer-to-peer electronic cash are like, yeah, eCash is the least bad. It's fixed a bunch of incentives issues, such as funding, right? We're seeing this as an issue in BCH right now. Even in Bitcoin, they're like, everyone's got to fund El Salvador. Like, we need to support this project. And people are like, well, I'll just free ride. Thank you very much. Like, I'm not wasting my coins to fund the project when someone else, let one of the whales fund it. So eCash has innovated on the scaling issue. You still have cheap, fast, uncensorable transactions, and it's also fixed the funding issue. It still has, I wouldn't call it money per se yet. It doesn't have the store value or unit of account. And I would even go as far as to say the three properties of money, medium of exchange, store of value, and unit of account are almost an ordered list, where first is medium of exchange. If you can't exchange it, then it's definitely not money. Next, you need store value. If it doesn't store the value, then it's not very functional as money, and you'll use something that stores value better and it's a medium of exchange instead of the less good store value and medium of exchange. And when you get the first two, you can get the final three, which is unit of account. To be able to price contracts in money, it needs to be stable, it needs to store value. And that's what's needed to jump the unit of account. So I think it's sort of an ordered list where you get the medium of exchange. Bitcoin does fairly well on that. You could make some arguments for and against it. The network fees have gone quite high at times, but it's also accepted in a ton of places and uncensorable to some degree. You could argue Lightning channels can, be offline and block payments and create issues. You can just Google issues with Lightning. They're non-trivial. I suspect they're quite rare and kind of like very niche cases, but there's like pretty concerning stuff that are vulnerabilities of a layer two network. But overall, I'd say Bitcoin's a pretty good medium of exchange. The store value is just so easy to see when you go up talk with maxis who are, maximalists, and they don't want to spend it because they think it will appreciate soon. Same thing with unit of account. Almost none of them are willing to price their labor in Bitcoin and the people who are buying their labor also aren't, because who knows, it could move 10% tomorrow. And that's like no way to price contracts and other agreements. So I think eCash has uh, a better implementation of Bitcoin as defined by the white paper, and it's still not the final form, I don't think. Whether they will change. The big issue, which was also discussed, was deflationary money. And that is a tough conversation to discuss because I don't want to say it's hypothetical, but like, how would deflationary money look in a Bitcoin standard world? It's like if we get to the Bitcoin standard, likely we have a lot more freedom and a lot less government regulations and taxes. So we have to take that into account and how it would work. But just the economics in general is if you can make money from holding, then why would you sell that to do some kind of business, or why would you even work if you have big enough bags? It doesn't really make sense. If you have, 100 Bitcoins, then better you just live in the cheapest place you can and let it moon if you believe Bitcoin is going to go to 100K or a million or whatever. And that same effect would occur in Bitcoin standard. It would potentially even be worse. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on deflationary money, but to me it seems you have to have a coin supply that grows with productivity growth, or you're just going to create this massive issue of everyone who has money will get more and more money each year as this new productivity is forced into the same money supply.
Yeah, it's one example that Shama often brings. I was like, okay, say you have a cafe, and someone pays you 100, I don't know, 100 satoshis for the coffee, whatever, and then you have to pay your staff, you have to pay your expenses in Bitcoin, and then say that costs you like 95 sats or whatever. Like, so you make like 5 sats of profit. I don't like, I'm just, that's hyper Bitcoinization where everything is Bitcoin and sats are super valuable. What if he could just hold those 95 satoshis, just be like, okay, let me just like sit on them and then wait until they're worth as much as 100 satoshis are at that time. So if you can buy more with the same amount, because of deflationary money, then you don't have an incentive to do any businesses, because it would just be smarter to just hold the money and not invest it. And I think that is why, together with Shama, I created Lotus, which wants to address this issue and allow people to like, where like you almost have an incentive to spend your Lotus, right? Like Lotus in Greshams Law terms is not like, it is something that you're like, hey, like, does someone accept this? Yes, like, okay, let me use that. Whereas this with Bitcoin, it's much more like, oh no, this might go up in value, and I'm gonna hate myself in a year, as you said, as all the people said at that Bitcoin meetup you referenced. And the way Lotus does that is by soft stabilizing the price. So if the price goes up a lot, then the hash rate will follow. But if the hash rate goes up, we programmed it such that more coins are emitted. It's a logarithmic relationship. So every doubling of the hash rate increases the number of coins by 130 coins. So every time it doubles, 130 extra coins. So it's not like this will just run away at some point and just flood the whole market, especially once technological improvement is there in mining. But yeah, what do you think about that? And do you even think that a coin should be the money we use, or should we rather always use something like an e-token, something like a token, and always only use the base token as fuel?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say always, if at all, if I can avoid it, right? I think that's a dangerous word that gets you into maxi territory. Bitcoin will always be number one, right? So I can't criticize them for such statements and then say the same thing. So what I would say is stable coins are the clear next step. Having a token that's already the unit of account is key, right? The way I see it is there's an ordered list, or at the very least, 1 + 1 = 2, where you need the medium of exchange and you need the store value, then you get the unit of account. And the unit of account is really the key for money, because it's psychologically huge to be USD, and dollars in general has been talked about. Dollars have been around for hundreds of years. Dollars, that just the word means money, whether it's Canadian dollars or US dollars, like these unit accounts are quite sticky.
It actually originated in like the word dollar originates from the word taler, which originates actually in Europe near I think Spain. Now it's the Czech Republic. No, the Czech Republic actually. They minted the first taler, Joachim's taler, they called it. And from there it kind of spread, and then people just started calling all their coins taler, but it all bootstrapped sort of from that value. So we have a direct link from that coin, and they're all precious metals, right? Like that's what people forget. Like the dollar it used to be based on a precious metal, and therefore it has this kind of history. Yeah, and we can tap into that with stablecoins, as you said.
Yeah, so I think the stable coin, I don't see any traditional cryptocurrency becoming a unit of account. It's just a huge mess, especially with the current denominations, Satoshis, and it's just like, I don't even know what a Satoshi is in terms of value. And like, I don't like this millionth of a Bitcoin. It's just like, that's too much. Even
It's
if
actually a
it were very
tenth of a
simple,
million.
yes,
Great.
whatever, exactly. It's like not even worth worrying about every order. It's like they'll tell me how much, my wallet will scan it and it'll go through. It's going to be priced in dollars either way. I'm not learning this silly number system. So the unit of account, I think, is key, and e-tokens allow you to use, whether it's dollars or in Honduras, they use lempiras. People are used to that. Crypto's already got enough new things they have to learn. Like, let's keep the UX as simple as possible. Once we master e-tokens, then we can try to figure out how to have a more decentralized version. Ideally, something like Lotus that should be somewhat stable in value because the money supply should increase with mining hash power, which is an approximation of productivity growth. So I think that's the direction we need to move on. I'm not a maxi, like I like Lotus. I think it's one of the best projects so far, taking into account all the incentives, which are very important. I think it's Bitcoin. It does what the white paper says Bitcoin is supposed to do, and it's just in the earlier stages than most coins and has less funding than your average coin. eCash would be number two in terms of peer-to-peer electronic cash, and it's in a mature enough stage where you can build businesses and ecosystems around it. So build on eCash right now, but I wouldn't be surprised if many of the ecosystems here in Honduras and elsewhere switched over to Lotus one day as the maturity of the project grows.
Awesome. I think that's a good point to stop it. Before we stop it here, let's talk a little bit about the conference. There's the Electronic Cash Conference in Prague. You were interested in going there to do, like, maybe talk a bit more about the Honduras enterprise. What would you like to see? What kind of spirit would you like to see on such a conference?
I would like there to be the idea of embracing the collective. I think that's the hyper individualism is a big problem in many crypto freedom libertarian type movements, and it's really hurting adoption and progress. You're seeing it with the Bitcoiners saying to, oh, we got to help El Salvador, and like, why won't you guys donate? And they're just like, no, my coins are for me. And I think the incentives are important, and you want incentives that encourage cooperation, but a part of that is a culture that encourages cooperation. So I'd like to see the peer-to-peer electronic cash people embracing collectivism and saying that money requires multiple people. We have to work together. Let's try to build the best money. And it may not be our favorite one that wins. It may not be our baby, but as long as someone's baby wins, then let's support them. And let's support other projects, even if they're not supporting us. Let's support Bitcoin, let's support Lightning, let's support them all, and lead by example by loving our neighbor and using our wealth to help the poor.
That is very good. Yeah, I like that. I like that story. Yeah, I think it's something that people forget. Like, I would have expected, an answer of, oh, it's a big, it's a really cool conference. It's gonna be a lot of fun. But, like, at the end of the day, it's like, okay, how can we like why are we here? What's the spirit that unites us? What's the, what is the collective behind there? And yeah, and this is something that this is the reason why the electronic cash conference is there, to like connect people, to create a sense of community, to be able to see each other, and also to teach each other. Like there will be a few workshops. There will definitely be a workshop on Stamp, so sending private messages over Lotus. How does that work? Like what are the incentives behind that? We'll also have a bunch of really interesting speakers. Thorsten Polleit from the Mises Institute, Germany, will be there to talk about central bank digital currencies. This is something the two of us did not cover at all on this podcast, but it's something that everyone who is remotely interested in crypto should pay very close attention to. This is going to shape the way money will be used, and the money crypto will be used globally very soon, very, very soon. And it's important that people who care about the monetary system, like crypto people, are fully prepared for that. So yeah, like really excited about the conference. Lots of really cool people will be there. And the link is 2022.be.cash. It will be in the description. There you can still use the code lockdown, the promo code lockdown, to get 20% off. We do have online tickets now, because many people are not so fortunate to be able to travel wherever they want all the time. And it will be really cool because it'll be like you will have a map of the venue. You'll be able to walk around and like have a video chat with other people who are also like sitting down and so forth at the same time. I think this is something that really embraces this spirit, scales it a little bit up, like if we do that a repeating thing, this could become really, really like for a lot of people. And yeah, excited about that. How can people find you? Do you like talk about your stuff anywhere?
Yeah, well, you can find me on Telegram, Alex Ugorji, Twitter, Alexander Ugorji, and the tentative name of the project is Project Mayflower. We're trying to build a breakaway civilization that's like America too, and thus we're taking a journey down to a new place. It's like the Mayflower journey to the first America. So mayflowermove.com is our current homepage, and you can find some information about Honduras there. We hope that the next eCash conference will be down here where people can experience what it's like in a circular economy that's based on eCash.
Awesome. Yeah. Why not? Like if we can make it happen, let's see. All right. Thank you so much for coming on. Yeah. And let's do that. Let's do the same thing in a bit of time and see how things have progressed from there.
All right.